You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Feel like who art ed?
We'll try to spice it.
Who art ed? Mr. Wood art ed me.
Good. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, weekly art history for all ages. I'm your host, Kyle Wood, and today we're looking at the Parthenon. The political and financial architect of the project was Pericles, a prominent statesman and general who governed Athens during its golden age. Pericles appointed Phidias, a master sculptor, and he was the artistic overseer. Phidias worked alongside the leading architects, Iktinos and Kallikrates, to design and construct the monument between 447 BCE and 432 BCE. This was during the classical period of ancient Greek art. Artists focused a lot on naturalism with idealized human proportions and structural harmony. Phidias was already famous throughout the Greek world for his monumental bronze and chryselephantine statues. Chryselephantine was an ancient technique combining gold and ivory. The term literally comes from the Greek words for gold and ivory. The ancient Greeks used it to make amazing larger-than-life statues of the gods like Zeus. Chryselephantine work also had a bit of a revival, although with smaller scale works, in the Art Deco movement in the 1920s and 30s. But back to the Parthenon. They began building the Parthenon in the aftermath of the Persian Wars. In 480 BCE, the Persian army sacked Athens and destroyed the older, uncompleted temple at the Acropolis. When Pericles rose to political power decades later, he leveraged victory funds to rebuild the complex as a symbol of Athenian resilience and imperial dominance. Iktinos and Kallikrates were master builders who focused on mathematical ratios to push the boundaries of stone architecture. The grand vision of Pericles with his master artists and builders transformed Athens from a war-torn city into the cultural capital of the Mediterranean world. Now, here are 5 quick things to know about the Parthenon. Number 1, the looks can be deceiving because the Parthenon doesn't actually have a single straight line. To the human eye, the Parthenon looks perfectly square and straight, but this is actually a bit of an illusion engineered by the architects. If the columns and foundation had been built completely flat and vertical, standard human visual perception would make the building appear to sag in the middle and bow outward at the top. To counteract this effect, Iktinos and Kallikrates employed a technique called entasis. The stone foundation, or stylobite, curves upwards slightly toward the center, rising a little over 2 inches on the short ends and just over 4 inches on the long sides. Also, the columns swell slightly in the middle and tilt inward at an angle. If the columns were extended vertically into the sky, they would eventually meet to form a pyramid about 1.5 miles up. Number 2. The building functioned as a highly secure treasury. While the Parthenon is widely recognized today as a religious temple, its primary civic function was serving as a vault for the Delian League's monetary reserves. The Delian League was an alliance of Greek city-states formed to fight the Persian Empire, and Athens was the self-appointed leader of the coalition. In 454 BCE, Pericles moved the League's collective treasury from the island of Delos to the Athenian Acropolis. The back room of the Parthenon, known as the Opisthodomos, was designated to house these massive tribute funds. This financial consolidation allowed Athens to fund its vast naval fleet and pay for the expensive marble reconstruction of the city itself. Number 3. While we see it as stark white, the Parthenon was actually originally painted in bright, vibrant colors. Modern viewers are accustomed to seeing the pristine, weathered white marble of the ruins, but the ancient Parthenon was originally covered in intense color. The Greeks used polychromy, applying pigments made from minerals and organic binders to the stone surfaces to make the architectural narratives legible from the ground. Archaeologists have used ultraviolet light and chemical analysis to discover trace remnants of Egyptian blue, red ochre, and yellow pigments on the structure. The background of the frieze and metopes were painted in deep blues and reds, while elements like weapons, horse reins, and clothing details were accented with gold leaf. This created a high contrast visual display that could be easily seen from the city below. Number 4. The temple has been converted into a Christian church and an Islamic mosque in different periods. The Parthenon survived as a pagan temple to Athena for around 1,000 years, but its religious identity shifted dramatically during the medieval and early modern eras. In the late 6th century CE, under the Byzantine Empire, the building was converted into a Christian church dedicated to the Virgin Mary, known as the Church of the Pathenos Maria. Then, centuries later, following the Ottoman conquest of Athens in 1456, the building was adapted once again. This time, it became an Islamic mosque. A minaret tower was constructed on the southwest corner of the structure, and Christian frescoes were whitewashed. And these conversions actually helped the Parthenon to survive for so long, because the building remained an active site of worship for these successive empires. Its core structural integrity was maintained for centuries. And finally, number 5. A lot of the ruins we see today are due to a massive gunpowder explosion in 1687. The catastrophic damage visible on the Parthenon today occurred during a single event in the late 17th century. During the Mauryan War, the Venetian military laid siege to Athens, which was occupied by Ottoman forces. The Ottomans mistakenly assumed the Venetians would respect the historic architecture, so they used the interior cella of the Parthenon to store their ammunition and gunpowder supply. On September 26, 1687, a Venetian mortar round fired from the nearby Philippopolis Hill had a direct hit on the building. The resulting explosion blew out the central walls, brought down 14 exterior columns, and collapsed the heavy marble roof. So while the building has been around for over 2,000 years, most of the damage we see today came from just a single military strike on one day in the 17th century. Now, to wrap things up, I just want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the elements in the Parthenon. Most people will focus on 3 distinct elements: the pediments, the metopes, and the inner frieze. Carved entirely from high-grade Pentelic marble, these reliefs and freestanding figures represent the pinnacle of high classical sculpture. There's just amazing mastery of human anatomy, dynamic movement, and really complex drapery in these intricate sculptures. The sort of narrative of the architecture begins with the exterior facades. The east pediment depicts the miraculous birth of Athena from the head of her father Zeus, while the west pediment illustrated the fierce competition between Athena and Poseidon for the patronage over the city of Athens. Below the pediments, 92 individual square panels called metopes depicted mythical battles representing civilization triumphing over barbarism. These included the Trojan War and Centauromachy, where Lapiths fought wild centaurs. All of it's rendered in dramatic high relief. The most innovative component, though, was the low-relief continuous frieze that wrapped around the exterior wall of the interior chamber, or cella. It's 524 feet long and 3 feet 5 inches high. It depicts the Panathenaic procession, a grand civic festival held every 4 years to honor Athena. There are over 300 human figures, 200 animals, citizens, horsemen, musicians, sacrificial animals, all marching toward the Olympian gods. Phidias adjusted the depth of the carving so it was deeper at the top than at the bottom, so viewers could look up from the colonnade and still be able to read it all accurately. The creation of these sculptures was as much about politics and ideology as it was about the artistic beauty. By placing contemporary Athenian citizens on the same visual plane as the immortal gods on the inner frieze, Pericles and Phidias were using the art as sort of propaganda. It spoke to the greatness of the Athenians, asserting that the city's democratic system and military triumphs were blessed by the gods. Unfortunately, that divine blessing can only take you so far, and even today there's quite a bit of an international cultural dispute surrounding the Parthenon. Between 1801 and 1812, Thomas Bruce, the 7th Earl of Elgin and British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, removed about half of the surviving sculptures from the ruin and shipped them to England. They're widely known as the Elgin Marbles, and these pieces were sold to the British Museum in 1816, where they remain on display today. The Greek government has actively campaigned for their legal repatriation to Athens since the 1980s, making the ancient Parthenon sculptures one of the most prominent flashpoints in modern discussions of museum ethics.
This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted, part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. If you found this tolerable, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week on social media at Who Arted Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.